I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be Brexit and the 4th of July. Well, I've got an email here from a viewer in the UK who's an avid follower of mine, and he wanted to get my opinion on what the consequences are and the meaning of the recent decision by the British people to give the big hairy middle finger to the European Union and say, "We out of here!" and leave the European Union. So I wrote a bunch of different things down that I wanted to go through and just bullet point by bullet point for those of you that are interested, because as you've probably heard me say many, many times, politics, government, understanding all these things, having the freedom to be who you are, the freedom to live your life, to come and go as you please and be self-reliant, is really dramatically impacted by people and government. And since I have clients on every single continent and country of the globe around the world, depending on where you live and where you're at is going to determine how much freedom you have to be who you really are. And after all, I'm a life coach. I teach people self-reliance, and this is an important thing even for those people that have or think they have no interest in politics, because a very wise man once said, just because you don't take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you. And right now, no matter what country you're in, you got people in government passing laws. They're going to tie you up and bind you up and make you less free. And the more you're knowledgeable about these things, the more you can vote for and support candidates that will enable you or help you through the passage of laws or the restriction of government laws to reach your full potential. So I got a quote that I wrote on this topic, and then we're going to go through his short email and then all the little bullet points that I want to cover. And the quote says, "Freedom is the destiny and birthright of all of mankind. Unfortunately, the world is full of people who think they have the right and privilege to tell the rest of us how to live, what to eat, what kinds of relationships we should have, how, where, and what we should do for a living, how much of our own money we get to keep, and what we can and can't do with our time. The God-given freedom of the individual must be defended and protected for all of humanity from control freaks, tyrants, and busybodies who can only validate their own existence by their ability to control and decide the fates of others. Like it or not, your ability to remain free and self-reliant is your duty and responsibility to defend and protect from those who would take it from you by force of arms or force of law." So let's go through his email. He says, "Dear Coach Corey, I know I write to you a lot, but on the British vote to leave the EU, I would really like to hear your opinion. There are a lot of nervous people here, both British and Europeans, about their future, including me, who voted to leave." Dude, you're a fucking patriot. Good job. "Have we screwed ourselves, or have we regained what we lost?" I would say you at least regained a part of what you've lost. It's kind of ironic. We fought a massive war against oppression and persecution against Germany, only to find that they got to us through politics in the end. I would love to see a video on this. Well, there's a lot of people in Europe, they look at the German economy and how well it's doing versus a lot of the other members of the European Union. They look at Greece. That's literally, Germany's doing great as an economic powerhouse, and Greece is basically becoming a third world country. And like I've talked about in the article I did a while back, how the economy really works, and also what is money really, the big problem the Greek people have is they no longer have their own central bank. They gave up the drachma, their original currency, to go with the euro. And therefore, they're at the mercy of the policies of the European Central Bank. And when an economy is not doing well, it always boils down to a money circulation problem. And the Greek people, and the reason why their economy is in the shitter, is a money circulation problem. The good news is the people of the UK, they never gave up the British pound. They always have had their own central bank, and their own currency. And that was one of the fucking smartest things they ever did, because the definition of a free state is having its own currency. I'm not going to go into extensive detail on that because I've already covered it in 2 previous articles, but for those of you that haven't seen it or it's been a while, I highly recommend that you watch What is Money Really? And also How the Economy Really Works. So I'm going to go through some of the things that, because I've been listening to and I've been hearing, and one of the things that I saw is that 70% of all new laws in Great Britain are being made outside of the UK. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I mean, think about it. I live in Orlando, Florida. I'm very familiar with the city and what the city needs and doesn't need. And I personally, like most people, wouldn't want somebody 1,000 or 2,000 miles away writing laws and dictating. I mean, because think about it. In our country, power is distributed. We're a republic, a constitutional republic of 50 independent, free, sovereign nations. We're states. Where I literally live in the state of Florida, which is like its own country. And if the Constitution doesn't specifically give a power to the federal government, it's reserved for the state. The whole idea is that the state and local governments are supposed to take care of their own problems. Why? Because they live in the area versus some bureaucrat that lives in Washington, D.C. or Brussels, or nobody likes to be told what to do by people that don't live in your community, don't speak the same language a lot of times, or have the same culture or goals or values. It's just the way it happens to be. And you look at that, what the European Union represents is a world government project. It's been in the media for many, many years. A bunch of intellectuals got together, driven by the Rockefeller family, a bunch of trust fund babies, in essence, who inherited all their money from great-grandpa. And so they have more money than they could ever spend, and they believe this was originally founded back, this was after World War II. They thought if they got everybody together in a common currency and a common country, that it would end all these destructive wars. And eventually, when the European Union has all the countries together, it would become subservient to the United Nations, and they have the same plans to do the same thing with the United States and Mexico and all of Central America. They even have a currency called the Amero, which Canada, the United States, and all of Central and South America would eventually use as their one single currency and have a world government, basically of a bunch of unelected bureaucrats deciding anything and everything that people can do all around the world. And what you see is that the British people got really fucking tired of it. They got tired of people outside of their country making laws and imposing their will on them. That is just a fact of life. The voters have spoken. They said, we don't want this shit. What's interesting is you see a lot of people on TV, even guys like Richard Branson, a billionaire, who, quite frankly, he's looking out for himself and his business. And he thinks there should be a second vote. And so just because the British people have voted to leave the European Union doesn't mean that it automatically happens. They still have to invoke Article 50. And once Article 50 happens, then they've got 2 years to negotiate the terms. So right now all that's happened is a referendum has passed, and they've all basically said, we're going to leave. And so once the new prime minister comes into power, hopefully they will invoke Article 50 and start the negotiation process of negotiating new trade deals with them and the rest of Europe and the world for that matter. But right now, nothing has changed other than a vote was held. But the thing is that the British people are going to have to hold their politicians and their business elite and enlightened intellectuals, as David Rockefeller likes to refer to himself and people like him. You can tell there's a concerted effort to just basically ignore and disregard the will of the people. So just because you guys the British people have voted doesn't mean it's going to happen, because there's a lot of very powerful people with a lot of money behind them that are just trying to sweep the Brexit vote right under the rug and ignore it and change the subject. That's how all tyrants think. They think they're smarter than you and I. They think they're better than the rest of us, and they should be telling all of us how to live our lives. So I've got some quotes that I gathered up that I wanted to mention, and some of these I've posted on Instagram. And this one is from Tacitus. This goes back thousands of years. The more corrupt the state, the more it legislates. Remember what I was saying earlier? 70% of all new laws in Great Britain are made outside of the UK. In the United States, our federal government is not supposed to govern the country. They're actually supposed to govern the affairs of the country and its relations with other sovereign countries and nation states. The average person really doesn't know that. And the whole idea with the Euro project is to get people to believe in the Euro state. They're even talking recently that now they're calling, well, the European Union needs to have its own army and military because NATO can't defend them. I mean, right now, it's like, it's so blatant what they're trying to do. They always said it was an economic thing for the European Union. No, it was world government. And this is a 50, 100-year type project. It's not the kind of thing that's going to happen in a few years. It's just slow, incremental change. You look at things like Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg type of group, all of these people of these self-appointed intellectual elite who think they're better than all the rest of us, that's what they're all working towards. It's amazing the group think. And if you look at the changes in our education system, they're doing everything they can to get God out of the classroom, if you will, not any talk about religion, and cause future generations to be more loyal to the individual government and not so much your families. It's amazing. Like kids today, they aren't even taught the stuff that I was taught when I was growing up about the Declaration of Independence and government and how the state, all the individual 50 states and the federal government works. It's not even talked about. I mean, I'm sure everybody that's watching this video has seen interviews of some of the youth in our younger generation, and you ask them, who fought in the American Revolutionary War? And they go, Germany? Did we fight Canada? Like, they don't even know. It's horrible. Another quote, the penalty good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. You can only be free if I am free. Clarence Darrow. What is permissible is not always honorable. And I look at the European Union, the whole project, it's a tyrannical world government project, and I am not in favor of that. Because all it does is concentrate more and more power in a ever-shrinking small group of intellectual elite who are going to make all the decisions for the rest of us. And that simply has never worked in all of human history. There's not one example where that has worked and it's endured and it's been just and it's been free. Here's another one by Plato. One of the penalties for not being involved in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. When you listen, no care what country you're in, when you listen to your politicians, do you think that person's an honorable person? If you look at their body language and their physiology, employing the things that I've taught in the article, body language that attracts women, you listen to the tone of the voice, do you think that person is telling you the truth? Do you think they're being honest with you? Do you think they have your best interests at heart? It's not just about picking up women. It's about learning to look at and judge everybody that you encounter in your life. And that includes the people that you elect to govern your governments. This is Abraham Lincoln. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Ralph Waldo Emerson. And when you think about all the cultural and societal pressure on all of us to be a certain way, to think a certain way, to do things in a certain way, it's really overwhelming. Man exists for his own sake and not to add a laborer to the state. Another one by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And here's an example. I've seen some of you making comments about when you see, like sometimes my videos that are over 30 minutes long, you see there's a pause right around 30 minutes. Like, why is that? Well, in the infinite wisdom, this all goes back to the European Union and incompetent bureaucrats and their unintended consequences. They wanted to have a 5 to 12% import tariff on video cameras. And so what all the camera companies did was, because what they did, and is that, and I'll even have a link that'll take you to the original article, was they had it, okay, well, what classifies or constitutes what a video camera actually is? And so they put a limit on it of 30-minute consecutive segment of video. So any DSLR camera or the high definition camera that I use, they all have limits of 29 minutes and 59 seconds. So right at 29 minutes and 59 seconds, the video cuts off. And then you have to start a new segment. That's all to avoid the 5 to 12% tariff that the European Union enacted on video cameras. So technically, the camera that I'm shooting this on is technically could still be a camera and not a video camera. It's bullshit. It's stupid. It's an inconvenience. It causes a break, and I can't just shoot until I get done shooting. It's just one example of a bunch of bureaucrats getting together, people that aren't even fucking elected, and it impacts millions of us all around the world. So next time you're shooting something with a video camera and it cuts off at 30 minutes, that's why. All in an attempt to avoid a 5 to 12% tariff or tax. It's fucking stupid. And one thing I want to say about, like I was talking about earlier, that the advantage the British have versus a country like Greece or France or even Germany, is the British were smart. At least some of their leaders were smart. And they said, we're not giving up the pound. We're not giving up our own central bank. And at the end of the day, the euro is just another currency. And like I talked about, and what is money really? Money has two primary purposes. It's a medium of exchange that facilitates commerce, and it's a store of value. So what are the consequences in the pound? Well, the pound has dropped in value, and the euro has also dropped in value. And it's been good for the US dollar because the dollar has increased. In other words, the reason the value drops is because the perception of that currency's ability to hold its value has diminished. And at the end of the day, the currency going up or down is really driven by traders anyway, making money on a trade. The British people still have their own currency, and more than likely, think about it, you'll still accept euros, just like there's some places in Europe when I've traveled that I'm able to use US dollars instead of having to exchange it into a euro or the pound. The bottom line is if the currency holds its value, people will still be happy to accept it. Not a big fucking deal. Even though you hear in the media, there's a lot of fear, be afraid, oh my God, the sky is falling, the economy's going to crash. Another thing you got to consider is I think there's 1.5 million people, 1.5 million Britons that are living in the European Union, living and working there, that are now, once the British people actually leave the euro, that could potentially be in jeopardy. But there's also about 1.5 million people from all over Europe living in the UK and working there. So I would imagine, because everybody has the same number, everybody's got citizens in each other's countries, that's something that simply can be worked out and negotiated in the separation agreement. Maybe gives them dual citizenship, so you're citizens of the European Union and you're also citizens of the UK. It's a simple thing to be resolved. And any politician or any shithead in the media that tries to scare you, don't fucking listen to them, because more than likely they don't know their asshole from a hole in the ground anyway. And like I was saying earlier, the EU is the tyrannical brainchild of busybody control freak trust fund babies. And here, this is a quote from David Rockefeller in his book. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. In other words, it's one world government. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. So right there, he's admitting that he's undermining the sovereignty and the freedom of the American people. That's something to think about. And here, this is a quote from Margaret Thatcher, who was the Prime Minister in the 1980s of Great Britain when I was growing up as a kid. And she is definitely a patriot. She said, "I came to office with one deliberate intent, to change Britain from a dependent to a self-reliant society. From give it to me to a do-it-yourself nation." And a lot of people bust my balls when I start talking about politics and governments, and they're like, well, it has nothing to do with getting laid. It has everything to do with self-reliance and the freedom to be who you really are. And she further goes on in her book, abolition of the pound in favor of the euro will constitute a major loss of Britain's power to govern herself, her sovereignty, and thus an unacceptable blow to democracy. The British people really should be grateful for the Iron Lady, if you will. She was a patriot and she believed in freedom. Not ruled by a small elite, not ruled by people like the Rockefellers and other people that think they're smarter than everybody else because they went to an Ivy League school and they therefore should be looking down at their noses at the rest of us and telling the rest of us how to live. She continues on, the alleged economic benefits of the euro are either non-existent or trivial or can be achieved by other means. The economic disadvantages are substantially greater for Britain even than for the other European countries. Well, Britain had a much bigger economy than all of them. Britain should not contemplate giving up the pound. And wisely, they did not. She had some real foresight, because today, now that they're going back to the pound, really the British people are just going to exclusively use the pound as their national currency. It doesn't preclude them from using the euro or the American dollar or the Japanese yen or the renminbi or the ruble or any other, or gold or silver, any other currency, or fine art or real estate or stocks or bonds. A unified Europe is a result of plans. It is, in fact, a classic utopian project, a monument to the vanity of intellectuals, a program whose inevitable destiny is failure. Only the scale of the final damage is in doubt. How prophetic. You could look at that and say, Margaret Thatcher was pretty much psychic. Brilliant fucking woman, brilliant patriot. And one of our great patriots said, if ever a time should come when vain and aspiring men shall occupy the highest seats in government, our country will stand in need of its experienced patriots to prevent its ruin. I believe that was a John Adams quote. John Adams or Samuel Adams said that. And these are this is a quote that I posted to Instagram recently. And this is from Lord Acton, also a member of British Parliament, who was also a great patriot and believed in liberty and freedom of the individual. He said, liberty consists in the division of power, absolutism, or despotism, if you will, in the concentration of power. So in other words, when you have a small group of people that make all decisions for everybody else, they tend to become tyrants, and people tend to lose their freedom. But when power is distributed like it is in the United States amongst all the individual states of the Republic, we have liberty. That's why the United States is still that shining city on the hill. Another Lord Acton quote, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You can look all through history. When you have a small group of people that make all the decisions, people end up revolting at some point because it always descends into tyranny. And that's where the European Union has been headed. And that is why the British people said, fuck you, we're out of here. We're not interested in this tyranny. We're not interested in your world government. We're not interested in your anthem, when we're not interested in your military and giving up our own military. That's simply not going to fucking happen. And I commend my British brothers and sisters for the fact that they had a spine and said, fuck you, and didn't believe the bullshit propaganda. And I don't know who said this quote, but it was one of I posted on my Instagram because it's so powerful. It said, "The issue today is the same as let me start that over. The issue today is the same as it has been throughout all history, whether man shall be allowed to govern himself or be ruled by a small elite." And so I want to close by reading something out of the Declaration of Independence, because we just had our birthday, our 240th birthday as a republic yesterday. And it says, "When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature," you should definitely look up laws of nature and understand what they are, "and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation." This is really powerful. "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." An unalienable right means it cannot be separated from you. That's the difference between a right and a privilege. A right means nobody can take it away from you. A privilege is something that is granted. "That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." In other words, being self-reliant and having the right to self-determination. "That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." The British people said, we are no longer going to consent to being ruled by a small elite that's unelected, undemocratic in Brussels. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their ultimate security. Fucking men. Live free or die, my fellow patriots. And if you would like to get my help personally to help you achieve your full potential in any area of your life that is important to you, go to my website, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book whichever coaching option works best for you. And if you'd like to get a copy of my book, go to my website and just click on the link that'll take you right to get the Audible version of my book, which has now been out for about 2 months. And I will talk to you soon.